Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the UBPOD episode number 4. It's been a while since I last sat down here to record one of these, much longer than I intended to, but god damn it, this happens to me every time I want to do a podcast and I want to keep it going with somewhat of a regular schedule. It never actually happens. And every time, it's not because I forgot, it's just that every time it's been on my mind right since episode 1, because episode 1, if you go back and you listen to the first 3 episodes of this thing, you'll see that I intended to do an episode on the Crash Trilogy on PlayStation 4 from the get-go, but that hasn't happened because I got sidetracked, with other games that I got into or that I was into at the time. So finally, here it is, episode 4, the episode of the Crash Trilogy. That's gonna be the main event. And I want to say I've been too tired, right, to record this. I've been too tired, and that's not a lie because I never forgot about this. I just kept postponing it. No, I'm too tired. I'm too tired. I'm too tired. And then right now, finally, like for the past hour, I've just been sitting here in front of my desk on my phone while it's been charging through my PS4, and I've been thinking, okay, you know what? I'm not doing anything right now. I don't feel like playing anything. I might as well sit down and finally do this and get it out of the way because it's been months and I meant to do this months ago. But here we are, finally. I can't even blame my quarantine on the tiredness because I've had a semi-reverse sleep cycle since before the quarantine was even here to try to end the world for us and flipped it upside down for everybody. These are strange times that we are living in. And I should mention, I'm not here by myself, although I thought I would be here by myself. I asked a couple of my friends and a couple of my relatives, the ones that I'm in frequent contact with, if they wanted to hop on to sit down and talk Crash for about an hour. I asked them on Facebook Messenger because that's where we're all at, and they said no. Well, actually, only one of them answered, and that one of them said, "Oh no, I haven't played a Crash game in like 13 years, and so I don't know anything. I don't know anywhere near enough to sit down and talk about Crash for a while." Which is the answer that I expected. But even though I was gonna do this by myself, I thought, you know what? No, I like having somebody here with me to talk with me. And so what ended up happening is because I knew I was gonna get a response like the one I just shared, or because I knew that I was just gonna get ignored and nobody was gonna answer. I decided to invite Jazmín back in. So Jazmín is back.
Wow!
For episode 4 of this goddamn thing because nobody wants to talk about this shit.
Well, actually, what if they're busy collecting crystals and they're wherever they're at?
No, they're not busy. They're not busy collecting crystals because they're too busy having Persona 5 up their asses.
Including me.
If you're my other sister, you're busy playing Spider-Man, which I would much rather give a go sooner than I would Persona 5, just because I'm tired of them recommending it and getting on being on my ass. No, I keep saying recommending it, and yes, they keep recommending it, but they keep staying on my ass about I gotta play it, I gotta play it, I gotta play it, and I'm like, motherfucker, step back. Step back. I keep telling them every time. I have this big old fucking bag. I literally own hundreds and hundreds of physical copies of games and cartridges and on CDs, and I stopped buying games frequently years ago, and that was because I was distracted by other stuff. I was busy with life at the time, as I guess you could say, and so it finally ended my almost weekly tradition at the time years ago of buying 1 or 2 games a week. And so, even though in the handful of years that I would buy, I would go to the fucking swap meet and I would just walk the whole thing, in the hunt for games. It did end, and I managed to amass a collection of several hundred games for the consoles that I own, which are about 30, 31, 32. I don't remember. It's been a while since I counted them. But nobody wanted to join me, which is what I expected because nobody has played Crash like I have. Nobody has grown up with Crash like I have. And so here I am, and Jazmín is the only one that I thought, okay, she could join because I feel that even though she hasn't played anywhere near as much Crash as I have, but I mean, I am, a decade older than she is.
Yeah,
She knows more than she knows more. I'd wager than the other people that I invited to come on for this episode combined. I think probably combined. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. What do you think, Jazmín?
Oh man. Well, that definitely caught me off guard. I do know a good number about Crash, but I didn't think I would know more than them combined.
Do you think if I asked you about, to give me a detail or two about Crash Bandicoot: The Huge Adventure on Game Boy Advance, or if I asked you about The Wrath of Cortex, or if I asked you about Twin Sanity, which is right there, which Javier gave me, which
Yeah.
I also invited for this episode, but I gave them a handful of minutes, and like I said, nobody fucking joined, but just me. But if I asked you, tell me one or two things about this Crash game or that Crash game on that console, handheld or otherwise, I think you would be able to tell me one or two things about it, which is more than I could say for the rest of the people that I know. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because there are so many fucking games out there that it's impossible to know everything about them all. But god damn it, Crash Bandicoot is Crash Bandicoot, and if you don't know Crash Bandicoot, there's something wrong with you.
No, it's simply that they're just too deep in the underground to know anything about gaming in general. Because Crash Bandicoot is a part of freaking gaming history, is it not?
Yes,
Pretty
big
much.
part.
It's a big part.
Because franchises like Crash Bandicoot, like Mega Man, like Sonic the Hedgehog, all these company mascots from years past that are still around today, although some have vanished for some time, like Crash, actually. Crash,
Yeah.
if you know your Crash Bandicoot history, you know your PlayStation history, you know that Crash Bandicoot was gone for a handful of years until he heroically came back, and rightfully so, with the Crash Insane Trilogy, which is the main event of today. But that's, I would like to think that it's common knowledge. But again, nobody. I got so much crap in my head about video games that that's why I have a YouTube channel, because I thought, okay, if I start this YouTube channel, I gotta do a podcast. Yes, everybody nowadays, because just the ease of access, technology. I've been thinking about this these past couple of days on and off. Technology is great because technology, although it gets more complex, engineers and software, just engineers of all kinds for hardware, for software, and programmers, and all the people all over the world that are involved in creating the devices that we use to make series like this, programs like these, like a podcast, right? They make technology easier for us to use so that we can bring you podcasts like this. But and that's great because everybody can do it. But the even though it's a good thing that everybody can do it, it's also a bad thing that everybody can do it, because then there's a billion podcasts out there from a billion different countries, and which ones do you listen to? You can only pick out a handful. If you're like me, I like to think that I'm normal, and I only have like about 2 dozen podcasts that I'm subscribed to, that I pick and choose from, and that's about it, because there's only so much time on a day. You can't subscribe to hundreds and hundreds because you can't listen to hundreds and hundreds because nobody's got that kind of time. It's just a limit to it.
No, the only one who has that kind of time is the Flash.
This is why I thought that maybe I should do this show by myself, because then I think, oh, she always whips out these jokes while we're recording.
Hey!
You're wondering, is she like that in person? She is exactly like this in person. And so am I, actually. I make jokes like this. I make bad jokes, dad jokes, cringy jokes like that sometimes too. But I mean, we're siblings. What can you expect? We have to be alike in some ways, and it's one of the ways in which we show that we're related.
Yes.
Anyway, this started out again, like I've mentioned, I think in the first 3 episodes.
We sidetracked.
Yes, we get sidetracked because I think, because of some of the podcasts that I've been listening to for years, I think that the best way to do a podcast is to just sit down. If you're the host, and if you're just a one-man crew, then you sit down and you do it, and you just go. You just go. You pick a topic. You're like, okay, this for this episode, I'm gonna talk about this game, since this is a gaming oriented podcast, it's because you play a game, you played a game recently, or you're playing through it at the moment, or it's a game that you're not playing right now, but you've spent more than enough time with it that you could sit down and talk about it for hours and hours on end, for days and days on end, like me. And even though I've had my collected thoughts about the Crash Insane trilogy for months, it's still pretty fresh in my mind that I don't need to take notes and I don't need to try to plan too much ahead because, like I said, I think it was in the first episode, if I try to write too much stuff down, if I try to plan ahead too far, then everything goes to hell and I end up making nothing, or if I do make something, I make something I'm not satisfied with. So the way I do things is just sit down by myself or get somebody else to sit down with me, and we sit down and we talk about this and we just trade, opinions and criticisms and comments back and forth to each other, right?
Exactly.
The main event is a Crash Insane trilogy, but before we get to the main event, I wanted to talk about something real quick. Lately, the games that I've been playing, it's been, I think, a couple of weeks since I last said that we wanted to do an episode on the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series.
Oh,
games.
yeah.
And so that's going to come in the future. I'm not going to give a date. I'm not going to say a week from now. I'm not going to say a month from now. Because, again, if I went a couple of months without, doing an episode of the show, I don't fucking know. Because I just feel tired. And sometimes I'm just not motivated. And poor me, right? It's not that I don't want to. It's just that, god damn it, the energy sometimes. But anyway, that's you can look forward to that in the future if you like this show. We're going to do that. I've only ever played Red and Blue Mystery Dungeon for Game Boy Advance and for Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
And
I've played a Red Mystery Dungeon and Explorers of Darkness.
yes.
And I told Pachito that those games, Explorers of Darkness, Explorers of Time, Explorers of Sky, those games are really good. He's got to play them.
And I fully believe that. Because even though the only games I played, like I just mentioned, I played Red and Blue, which are the first two games for Game Boy Advance or Nintendo DS. The ones Jazmín just mentioned are the ones that came after those two original games. And those, for as long as they've existed, have gotten, rave reviews that they're great games, possibly the best games in the series to date. But for the past, I don't know how many weeks, I posted something on Instagram when a day or two, I think, after I first started it. I've been playing Super Mystery Dungeon on the 3DS, and I originally wanted to play the games in order, right? Okay, so I played, over a year ago, I was playing Blue Mystery Dungeon on my tablet because I have emulators on my tablet, and years ago I used to be against emulators because I'm like, no, I want physical copies of my games, or digital if getting them physically costs too much, or you don't have access to a physical copy. But I'm like, no, and it's wrong ethically and whatever the fuck. But as the years have gone by, I've become softer on that stance, and I'm thinking, you know what? There's a lot of people out there who, either just don't want to have a massive collection of physical games, or who don't have that kind of money. So, there's nothing wrong with getting emulators and getting ROMs on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, or if you go out of your way to buy a third-party device from somebody that, that makes, third-party handheld systems or consoles, that you can play ROMs on. There's nothing wrong as long as, whatever device or platform that you're playing them on runs them well so that you have a good experience.
Yeah. Though I'm gonna admit I do have some fun playing Game Boy games on the DS because
That's
of
great.
your ROM.
And I've said before, I don't know if you remember this, anybody who's ever played a Nintendo DS, specifically the Nintendo DS Lite, knows how great the screens are on the DS Lite, especially the top screen. Because I don't remember off the top of my head what that kind of screen is called. So if you listen to this and you're welcome to point it out with a comment. But the screen on the DS Lite, the top one specifically, just looks fantastic. It looks crispy. It looks bright. It looks colorful. and that's the same screen that they used even before the DS Lite on that the good model of the Game Boy Advance SP. So there's a little tidbit of game history for you. So if you ever get a Game Boy Advance SP, or if you ever get a Nintendo DS and stuff, you want to make sure that the screens are good. Those are the screens you're going for, because if you get an original model DS, as much as I love them, the screens they do the job, but they're not as good as the ones on that Game Boy Advance SP, or as good as the ones on Nintendo DS Lite. And I'd even argue that I've said this before too. I don't remember if I said it to you or if I said it to our sister, that the screens on the 3DS, they get the job done perfectly no matter what 3DS you had, the original, the XL, or any of the new models. But they get the job done and they're perfect for 3DS games. But once you actually play DS games on them, the colors don't look as bright, and the sprites don't stand out as much as they do on a screen of a DS Lite or on that Game Boy Advance SP screen, because they're just brighter and they're pixels and they're just, I love that screen.
Yeah. Though I think the Game Boy Advance games that I have on my 3DS, they also look nice.
Yeah, they do. Again, the screens on a 3DS get the job done. It's just that when you're actually playing, and that's something too, when you're actually playing Game Boy Advance games on a DS Lite, or you're playing Nintendo DS games on a DS Lite, to use the top screen is just, about as good as sprite work, more than anything can look on a handheld device, I would think. And nowadays, of course, like I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you can get emulators on almost anything, and you could have classic games on a big HD TV, and they look great too. They do. Like on my tablet, they look great too. And so I played the heck out of going back to Mystery Dungeon. I played Red and I played Blue. I played Red on Game Boy Advance. I played the hell out of it. I played Blue on an emulator on my tablet at the end of 2018, a while ago. But they were basically the same games. Jazmín has played the sequels for the DS, and I've been playing on and off Super Mystery Dungeon for the 3DS, and I meant to play them chronologically, but what was it? I had that issue with the R4 card or whatever the heck, and on my 3DS, and on the red and black DS, and I wanted to play them on the actual device, but we don't actually have a legit copy of the games, and or any of the three games, and I had tried them on my tablet with a one or two DS emulators, and I can't remember the names of either off the top of my head, and it worked, but I don't know. I didn't like it, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna just jump ahead to Super Mystery Dungeon on 3DS, even though I didn't want to, because I can get that because a month or two ago, my sisters and I, all of us, we modded our Nintendo 3DSs, because we gave in. We're like, hey, we've had these things for years, and for some of those years, we've actually, ignored them because we haven't gotten new games for them, right? Because
they're freaking expensive. And they're rare.
Sometimes they're expensive, and yes, believe it or not, they're kind of rare, because here you go to an indoor swap meet, you go to an outdoor swap meet, and for whatever reason, DS games and 3DS games, and just actually portable games in general, Game Boy, DS, 3DS, PSP, it just, for a long time, they've been rare. When we first moved back home in 2010, because we lived in the US for a handful of years, you would see them sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. But nowadays, they're just gone. I guess people just lose them, right? So you can't sell something that you don't have anymore, or they end up in landfills or whatever the fuck, I don't know. But it's sad.
Yes, it is.
But that led to me just jumping straight ahead to Super Mystery Dungeon. But anyway, we're supposed to. We've been talking about this a lot. I didn't mean to talk about it so much.
Yeah.
Again, what happens when you just go off the cuff without anything written down? But we want to do a full episode on this on
Crash.
On yes, on the Mystery Dungeon series soon. So we might repeat bits and pieces of this whenever we do that. I also wanted to mention real quick though, we did those 2 episodes of on God of War.
Oh,
yes. The first 2 episodes, and I thought about doing a third now that we got through it together a while back. But I decided, oh well, no, just whenever the next time is that I sit down and do another podcast episode, we'll just mention it again. And so here we are. We got through it. We killed Baldur. We made Freya hate us. And we saw the teaser for Thor. Once you go back home and you're done with killing Baldur and having Freya hate you, and dropping
hell.
And dropping Faye's ashes in Jotunheim. And I've spent a good handful of hours playing the trials in Muspelheim over and over and over to get the resources to improve the best armors, and also in Niflheim also to improve the best armors. And even though it's repetitive, even though it's grindy, I actually, for the most part, really enjoyed my time in both places. And I actually last played, I was last playing the Trials of Muspelheim in, what the fuck? Oh, an alarm just went off.
Sorry.
God damn it. I muted my phone. You ever listen to the Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, the Steve Austin Show, which I haven't listened to in a while? But if you did, that every time his phone went off, he'd say, I owe everybody a beer. I don't drink, so I'm not going to owe you shit. But I hate it when that happens. I muted my phone even though it's right next to the mic right here, so that kind of thing wouldn't happen. But anyway, okay. The trials and stuff, all the grinding and stuff, even though it's grindy, I don't hate it. Because, I don't know, there's just a satisfaction in going back and just hacking and slashing enemies and over, and just, as you improve the armors, you get the best armors. And the enemies,
Say, Pichitos. Were there ugly big heads rolling around on the floor?
No, because it's in Skyrim. And I can tell you this much, Ragnar the Red wouldn't stand a goddamn chance against Kratos.
Oh, no. No, not even against Atreus.
Actually, yeah, probably not even against Atreus. No. Especially as you play through the game and you see, as time goes by, he keeps on developing more and more of his abilities. But, what the heck was I saying? I got sidetracked. We finished it, alright? I enjoyed all the hours that I spent in Muspelheim, that I've spent on Muspelheim and on Niflheim, just grinding and grinding, because I've improved the armor of the Valkyries, all the parts. I'm finished with
You hunted all the ravens already? Well, he did already.
I was getting to that.
Yeah, sorry.
Getting to that. So I got I fully upgraded the Valkyrie armors, the Muspelheim armor, the one with the single pauldron is the one that I went with, because I think Kratos looks best with just the armors that are just one pauldron. Although the ones that have 2 pauldrons, that cover both of his arms, are like my second favorite. I almost finished with one of the magma armors that are double pauldrons that cover, they're like almost like sleeves. They almost cover both of his arms. And I chose the one that activates the little firestorm when Kratos gets hit, right? And then it burns, the opponents near him. That's the one I went with. I almost got done with that. I just needed to finish upgrading. I think it was the pauldrons themselves. I just needed to get the crest of Surtur. I hate how I say that because I don't remember exactly how to pronounce it.
Surtur, I think.
Surtur?
I think it's just Surtur.
That sounds fucking dumb. I don't think it's that. I gotta go back. No, next time I replay God of War, and I will replay it. I'm gonna pay more attention to names and stuff, because there's a lot of names. Like when Mimir tells stories and stuff, there's a lot of names. Because you don't speak Icelandic nowadays, because I've read some of this. They say that that's the closest language to Old Norse that there is, which is
Elder Futhark? Sorry, it's the kind of like the name of the language, if I remember correctly. The text that we use, the runes, they're known as Elder Futhark.
Okay, and I believe that means Old Norse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't speak Icelandic, these names, they're not native to you. They're hard to fucking remember. I have no idea what the Icelandic population out there is, and it's obviously not the only language that's related to Old Norse. But for all you people who understand that thing, good for you, and I envy you because I bet you'd get more enjoyment out of the fact that you could probably decipher, some of some, or if not all of the runes. No, actually, probably not, because again, Icelandic is the closest, but it's not the same because obviously languages evolved with the passage of time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I enjoyed grinding. I enjoyed killing monster. I enjoyed killing Draugr and ogres and Valkyries and just collecting stuff. It's just fun. It's grinding, but it's grinding that I enjoyed. And speaking of Valkyries, you saw the fight. You didn't see it as I did it, but I defeated Sigrun, the queen of Valkyries, not too long ago, and I saved it. And she sat down and we watched the replay together because I wanted her to see it because she wanted to see it.
Yes.
And it was great. So I defeated all the Valkyries, and that's done. And the fight against Sigrun, she was. It makes sense that she was a queen because she was by far the toughest one. It took me 13 tries to beat her, which is nothing when you compare it to the fact that it took me like 43, 44 tries to beat what the fuck is his name? Ares. In the first God of War that was the first game I ever got the platinum for years ago on PS3, and in the hardest difficulty. So, 13 tries, 40 something tries, not the same. But as the fight against Ares at that time, when I was trying to achieve that in that game, that just got frustrating. At first it was fun, and I mean the whole journey when you're playing a very tough game is fun, but it can also be frustrating. So as opposed to being fun, especially at first, but then the more tries you get through, it starts becoming slowly a bit more frustrating. The fight against Sigrun was challenging every time, but it never stopped being fun. Because even though I lost to her 12 times and didn't beat her until the 13th, there were several attempts in which I got close. And the first time I got close, which was like the fourth or fifth attempt, I left her at like 40% health and then she killed me. It was, I realized that okay, you know what? I didn't know if I was going to need better gear for this, but I know that I can do it now. I didn't think I needed better gear. I know I can do this now. I just got to play better. I just got to be more careful, be more tactical, be more observant. And so I was. And, 13 tries later, I beat her. And it was so much fun, and it was so rewarding once I finally did. I've actually seen a couple people say the same thing recently on Twitter, because I recently started, after I platinumed the game, because I already got the platinum for it, which I recently, I saw people following.
Furrowing?
What am I, Takeo now? I went Asian, following. But I started following the director of God of War, Cory Barlog, and I've seen people who have just, a few people who have just either just defeated Sigrun themselves for the first time, or people who have just completed the game for the first time and gotten the platinum as well. So, people who can relate, and since since you can tell, especially once you've completed the game like I have, since you can tell that he and the hundreds of people that worked on this game put a lot of passion into it, and that's why the game is so good. It's very nice to see. I'm sure that every time he sees somebody praise the game as one of the best that they've ever played, that's gotta feel real good. Because I, as a fan who had nothing to do with the game, if I just love this, and I'm just glad that it has the recognition that it has, and that it's considered a gem in the PS4's library, that makes me happy. Imagine what it's like to be one of the many people that actually contributed to the game. I mean, that's gotta be everybody that worked on it. Cory, the director, and the programmers, and the art designers, and the people who marketed the game, and just everybody who who did all kinds of jobs and all kinds of tasks to make this game come to life. I just want to say thank you because you told an amazing, truly amazing, beautiful story that I won't soon forget. And it's a game that I, by far, we said this even in the first episode of the show, which was the first part in which we talked about God of War. That
Indeed.
not like halfway through, or was it even less than halfway through the story, I already had the inkling that by the time I was done, this was gonna be my favorite God of War in the entire series so far. And now that we've got through the story, now that I've defeated the Valkyries, now that I got the platinum for the game, I can say hands down, without any issue, that without any doubt, that it definitely is by far the best God of War game out of all of them in the series.
Really?
And if this game, that's an Atreus quote for those who might not know, but for those um, who have played this game, as good as it is, just imagine how good the next God of War is going to be.
Oh, it's gotta be good. Oh, come on! I'm just really excited.
If they've proven,
It'd be cool.
if they've proven that they can tell a story this good with this kind of history, now with this chapter of it, with God of War on PlayStation 4 on top of all the other chapters, you know how my God, it's gonna be great. I don't think they can let us down. They don't have to. The next God of War doesn't have to blow this one out of the water. It just has to be as good. It just has to be its equal, and with that, I think we'll all be happy. And I just very much look forward to it. Although obviously, it's been some 2 years since this God of War game came out now, and we're obviously gonna have to wait at least a handful more before the next one comes out, which makes me sad. Because if I could have it next year, I would shit a brick and I would cry tears of joy. But that's not gonna happen because beautiful, big, awesome games like these take a long time and a lot of resources and a lot of people to put together. So,
Yep.
I guess to end this, this bit about God of War, we can just say that thank you once again, Santa Monica Studios and Sony and just everybody from the top of the totem pole to the bottom, and the bottom. Everybody knows the bottom of any workforce is the base that holds everybody else on the top, quote unquote, together. Thank you so much for putting this masterpiece together, because for the rest of my days, this will forever be one of my favorite pieces of storytelling and of media, and definitely one of my favorite games of all time.
Yep. And I want to keep observing every last bit of this game's story, because it's just really good that I am very much looking forward to the next chapter.
Yes, indeed.
Anyways, it's been 33 minutes already, and we haven't spoken much about Crash.
Oh, because if you listen to podcasts, unless they're the kind of podcast, because there's a couple of podcasts I listen to in which they stick to a very specific set of topics. So once they do their introduction, right, they'll hey, my name is this, my name is that, whatever. Then they'll start talking about whatever the main topic is. They might get sidetracked here and there, but they don't last too long. There's one podcast that I love called the Jim Cornette Experience, and Jim Cornette's Drive Thru. I listen to that every freaking week because it's just hilarious and very entertaining. Because Jim Cornette is like that. It's wrestling, in case you don't know, for the most part. But what they tend to do is they talk about a couple of things before they get to the main event, the main topic. So that's what I wanted to try this episode, and I think it's gone pretty well.
Yeah, actually,
I've
enjoyed it too.
If you talking about one thing for an hour is great, but talking about one thing as the main topic later in the episode, and then talking about one or two things before it, I think is also pretty fun, as this session has proven. But now, yes, almost 35 minutes into the episode, I think it's time to move on to the main event. Let's talk Crash Trilogy, even though we talked about some Crash history at the beginning and stuff.
Yeah.
What the fuck is up with Crash Insane Trilogy? Why am I only getting to it now? Well, I already explained why. Because just tiredness, and postponing it, and procrastination, and other factors that I don't want to get into. But, Crash the Insane Trilogy. What can you say, Jazmín? I know I'm the one that platinumed all the 3 games, and got through them and put up with the immense frustration and suffering and rage and adrenaline and just surges of violence that this collection gave me. What can you, as somebody who hasn't played it like I have, who didn't put themselves through that hell, what can you say, looking from the outside in, about the Crash Insane trilogy?
Well, I can say that it looks pretty easy, but no. I definitely know with certainty that if you actually tried it, you're just gonna die 50 times in the exact same hole. Wait, no. I'm not our sister. But anyways, yeah, the game, it looks beautiful, alright? It's a beautiful game. There's a bunch of silly things here and there. And not to mention, even our villain is hilarious, the Cortex.
Yes. What can I say to that? Yes, Cortex is. I mean, he's a stereotypical because it was the '90s, right? And Sonic had set that precedent where you gotta. Well, Nintendo set the precedent back in the day in the '80s, in the mid '80s, that you should have a mascot for your video game company, right? If you're a video game company. And obviously, many companies out there, many corporations outside of the video game industry have their mascots and their logos and whatnot.
Yep.
But Nintendo, with Mario, is the one that said, okay, if you're a video game company, you should have a mascot. Their mascot is Mario.
Woo-hoo!
Then years later, the next decade after Mario started taking over the world, in comes Sonic. And Sonic sets this precedent. Actually, no, not even Sonic. Mega Man did it before Sonic did. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? Nintendo said the idea that you should have a mascot if you're a video game company, and then not too long after Mario, like 2-3 years later, I don't remember exactly when the first Mega Man game was released, but it wasn't much long after Mario came along.
Ooh,
so, actually, I take that back. Mega Man is the one who Capcom are the ones who set that precedent where you have a video game mascot, that's the face of your company, and the villain is a scientific genius. And of course Sonic comes along and they're like, you know what, we're gonna do the same thing. Our character is gonna be a furry animal though, because Mario's not an animal, Mega Man is not an animal. We're gonna have a furry animal, and we're gonna rip off the idea of having a mad scientist who wants to destroy or take over the world and whatnot. And of course, for Naughty Dog and the PlayStation brand, they took the idea of a mascot and they took the idea of having a hero who takes on a mad scientist villain also to heart, and they're like, you know what, we want to make our own version of that, and so Crash Bandicoot was born out of previous mascots and big hits and franchises like Mario and like Sonic and like Mega Man.
Yes.
And so, Crash Bandicoot was born in the 90s. And Crash Bandicoot has been around my life, throughout the entirety of my life. Because I was born in the mid 90s. And so Crash came to be in the mid 90s. He's just been in and out of my life my whole life. I grew up as a toddler, as a very young kid. I don't know why I had to say a very young kid right after that. I mean, like, fucking thing, right? Whatever. I'm just rambling here. But Crash has been around me my whole life, and I have very blurry memories of owning the Trilogy on PlayStation back in the day. And I went, what was it? Somewhere between 13 and 15 years without playing the classic Trilogy, actual classic physical copies of the first 3 games on a PlayStation system. And then when I did, it was with my jump back into it was with Crash 2 on and I used my PlayStation 3 to play it. And so I completed Crash 2 like that years ago. Later on, Javier gave me a copy of the first Crash, but unfortunately that one is damaged even before I got it, and it freezes up when you get to the Rolling Stones level,
Yeah,
which is like
Rolling Stones.
which is like the 6th level in the first Crash game on the first island.
It was very sad for the both of us.
It was very sad because at the time, the Insane Trilogy on PS4 wasn't a thing yet. Nobody knew that was going to happen. It was a couple of years before it. So that was disappointing because I thought, hey, I've completed Crash 2. Let's go back to the first Crash, but I wasn't able to. Later on, I ended up getting a lot more recently, but also like 2 years ago, I think, if even that, I got Crash 3 in its case, and I didn't get Crash 2 in its case. I got the first Crash in its case, even though the case is cracked.
Ouch.
But I got that, and I played through it, and I was on my way to completing it, but then the Crash Trilogy happened, and Tiny keeps on barking.
Yeah.
We might have to let him out, right? Do you want to let him out while I keep on going?
Yeah.
Even though my throat's getting dry because it's been 40 minutes, but please let him out. I'll pause this for a moment. That's the problem when you have pets, they interrupt you. But anyway, after that brief pause, I was going to complete Crash 3 on my PlayStation 3, with the actual disc, but then the trilogy gets announced. And so I thought, okay, I didn't even have my PS4 at the time yet. And I thought, okay, why complete it on PlayStation when I already played through the game and I can just do that once I get the trilogy someday, because I know that I will. I fully intend to one day. Lo and behold, you fast forward, it did happen. I didn't buy the trilogy myself. I got it as a birthday gift last year.
Oh yeah.
And so there you go. After I got my PS4, boom, and now we're here. And I've gotten the platinums for each and every one of the games. And now we can actually get into the nitty gritty. I was happy, of course, to get the trilogy as a present, and I don't remember growing up. I don't remember the original games being as hard as this were. But then you get into, I actually did, what was it, like 2 Crash videos here on the channel, and I mentioned in one or both of them, can't remember anymore off the top of my head. It was at least in one of them in which the games are incredibly frustrating because it came out after the games released originally in 2017.
Was it?
Or was it 2018? Either or. I think it was 2018. But after the games came out, it came to be known that the hitboxes for Crash had been changed. He was no longer, the area around him. A hitbox is, the range, the area that makes up a character in the game. That that the software uses to calculate in a given console or computer.
Calculation.
That this is the area where if it comes in contact with an enemy's hitbox, damage can be registered in the game, right? So in the original games, Crash's hitbox was, if I remember correctly, was a cube. It was a box. It was a crate, just like the crates that you smash in Crash games. But in this trilogy, they changed the hitbox and they made it smooth. They made it round. It's not a cube anymore.
Oh.
So, and if you ask yourself, if you don't know much about games, but you ask yourself about this, and you're like, well, what the fuck does that matter? Well, I'll tell you why that matters. If you've played the trilogy, you know why it matters. If you've played the trilogy and the classic games, you know why it matters. If you know anything about video games at all, you know why it matters without me having to explain it. It matters because things that you could do in the original games don't work exactly the same anymore. When I say things, more than anything, I mean jumps.
Oh yeah, freaking edges.
Yes, and I just explained that this in the past decade, I got copies of the original games, and so the games are still pretty damn fresh in my mind because it hasn't been that long since I've played them. I can tell you with absolute certainty that yes, this affects the gameplay because even in the first Crash Bandicoot, which was the wonkiest, the the clunkiest of the trilogy because it was the first game, and right.
Yeah.
And with any game series, as time goes by, the people that work on them, figure out how to program games better, how to design games better, how to make things smoother, easier to control, that kind of thing. So even if you take the first one into account, I remember thinking, what the fuck? It didn't feel this wonky to control, making jumps and just, you know, falling off of edges that you could make in the original version of the game wasn't like this. You could jump on edges without fear in the first game and in the second game and in the third game, and you could move around freely without the fear that if you landed at the very edge of a platform, of any kind of platform, you wouldn't fall off. You will land it. You will land it. You know, almost every single time without the fear of actually falling and dying. But because they changed the hitbox,
yeah, you slide off.
That is like the number one thing, the number one factor that makes the trilogy on PS4 and on Xbox. I played it on PS4. That makes the trilogy on these systems harder than the originals. And for a lot of people who grew up with the games, or a lot of people who didn't grow up with the games, but if they've played the originals today, they would tell you that, oh, the original games were hard enough, especially the first game, since it was harder to control. But that's the number one reason why the games are harder in this collection. And so my life was a living hell. I would say that the first Crash Bandicoot by far is the hardest in the trilogy, and I wanted to play them in order. There are people who have played it who, if you go on, I remember I saw it on a video or two on YouTube. I don't remember which ones because it's been a while. But there are people on YouTube, and I'm sure in forums and in comment sections, that will tell you, if you're new to Crash, if you've never played Crash games and you get this trilogy, Jazmín, you get it. No. It'll probably be easier on you to start with Crash 3 and actually work your way through the games backwards as opposed to playing them chronologically. And I'm like, nope. I grew up with Crash. I played through these games. I would get through these games even as a toddler, even though I don't have specific memories of them. The very few that I have are very blurry because it's been a long time. But I would get through these games. I remember I would get through the bridge levels, the snow bridge levels. I already forgot what the fuck they're called. In the first Crash game, I couldn't tell you how many tries it would take me, but as a kid, I would get through them. And I know this because I remember the boss fights. So that's how I know that I would get through them. Even if it was a bit of a struggle, I would get through them. And in the trilogy, I got through them too. Playing through the game, through the levels in the games the first time, can be challenging again because of the whole hitbox issue. It's not impossible, but just trying to get through the game without, trying to complete any of the three of them, just playing them normally just to get through it. And then once you get through the story, once you get through the levels the first time, then you go back, and for that replayability factor, and if you're a trophy hunter, like I've become now, even though I'm not hardcore into it, once you go back to the levels to try to complete the game, and you're trying to not die in levels, and you're trying to and you're trying to do the time trials, and you can't make mistakes in the time trials, that's when things like control and hitboxes matter. And in all of these games, there were a handful of levels that just pissed me the hell off.
Yeah, he got so angry once. He even scared me.
Did I?
Yeah, I remember the few times in which I've actually sat down and watched you struggle. You've raged so hard that I just got scared.
And here's the funny thing about that. When it comes to games, I have always, up until I played this trilogy, I've always been cool. I've always kept my cool. Yes, I rage and I swear and I cuss like, the average person does, right? When I get killed, sometimes I go, fuck! I'll go like, that son of a bitch, I'll just swear and cuss like any person does when they're playing a video game. Yeah. But that's normal. With the Crash trilogy, I got to a point, even though the first game was the hardest, when I got to Crash 2, I got to a point in which I felt this degree of rage in which I wanted to actually punch my TV screen, which no game ever in my life had ever wanted to make me do before, and I mentioned this to my friends and relatives in our group chat. No other game or set of games ever in my life. No NES game, and if you know NES games, and a lot of NES games are notorious. A lot of old, just classic games in general, a lot of them are notorious for being NES hard, as they used to say back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
No NES game, no GameCube game, no PS2 game, no N64 game, no PlayStation game, no 360 game, no PS3 game, PS4, you name it. No Genesis game, nothing. No game had ever made me rage to the point in which I actually wanted to punch my freaking TV. And as I was trying to get through Crash 2, because the first Crash had beaten my ass so hard after I got through it, after I got the platinum, and after I got through the first game, I had told myself, okay, this game has stressed you the fuck out enough. It's made you rage enough. What you're gonna do, you're gonna take at least a couple of weeks off, and then you're gonna come back to Crash 2, and then you're gonna do the same thing that you did with Crash 1. You're gonna complete it. That didn't happen. I think I only took a couple of days off after I got the platinum for the first one, and then I jumped into Crash 2. And it was a bad idea, because since I spent that required amount of time to complete the first Crash, it was still fresh in my mind, and the way the first game feels is completely different from the other two. So I kept on trying to control Crash and control my jumps and my movements as if I was playing the first one.
Oh, no.
And that was just brutal. That was brutal. You can't go into Crash 2 and 3 thinking that it's the first Crash, because then you're afraid. Because then you're afraid to play any more risky. And so, because the first Crash left me fucking traumatized with all that rage that I felt, that night in which I got so pissed off that I wanted to punch my TV, I had my DualShock 4, my God of War DualShock 4, in my hand. And I sat and I just slouched in my chair, just giving the death stare to my TV and thinking, if I punch my TV, am I gonna break it? And I actually raised my right hand, with my left hand still holding the controller. I raised my right hand and I tapped on the TV like this, because the TV is right in front of the mic. I tapped it like that a couple of times. And I thought, okay, no, this is a cheaper HD TV. It's a Polaroid. I thought, no, if I punch this freaking TV, it's not going to be able to take my punch. I'm going to break it. I'm not going to have a nice TV anymore. So control yourself and don't fucking do it.
Hold your horses.
And so I had to hold my rage, and I had to just, I don't remember if I turned the game off. I think I did, because I'm like, no, I gotta calm down. I gotta take this break. And so that's what I did. I had to calm down. And it happened several times after that too. I never did it. My TV is still safe and sound, thankfully, because again, I am not a rich person, and I can't just go and buy another new TV whenever the fuck I want to. I don't have that kind of money.
Nope.
I don't even have the best equipment for making videos like this. Or podcasts like this. I mean, but these podcasts are videos. So that never happened. But oh god, I was gonna get into specific levels. In the first Crash, obviously you have the bridge levels.
Yeah.
Those are very hard. Especially when you're trying to do the time trials. Especially when you're trying to get the gems. And in the first Crash, you can't get the gems if you die. If you die, you have to take off the level and you have to start all over. In 2 and 3, you don't have to do that anymore. If you die, you can continue from your most recent save point, and you can get the crates and you'll get the gem, even if you died a couple times in them.
Jeez.
And so, oh my god, they were just levels in Crash. In the first game too, the fight against Koala Kong took me a few more tries than I like to admit that it did. The fight against Dr. Embryo, the ugly ass bald dude with the screws on his head that throws the chemical bottles.
Yeah, I remember.
I died. What was it? I must have died. It must have taken me like 50 freaking attempts, if not a couple more than that, to get through that boss battle, because I had no idea exactly how you had to hit him. It turns out you have to jump on his head, but you have to jump on his head on a very specific area. And I kept trying to jump on him and jump on, and I would try to go spin on him from behind, from the front, from the sides. I would try everything I could think of, and I kept on dying and dying and dying until I finally figured out, because I didn't want to look it up, that you had to jump on a very specific spot on his head. Until finally I'm like, oh my god, that was it. And I did it, and that was that. And I got through it. The final boss fight against Cortex, I remember, it also took me a couple more tries than I'd like to admit. Because just for dumb, again, the controls, just stupid dumb shit that in the original games would never happen to you. Because arguably the controls were better in the original games. And they were still trying to figure out 3D in the 90s. Mid 90s especially.
Yeah,
right?
That was when Crash and everybody else were just a bunch of polygons.
Yes, that was back when Crash and Super Mario 64 and Banjo were trying to, we're revolutionizing and giving the world as a whole examples of how games work in 3D worlds. So kind of crazy to think that the controls in the original games are more accessible than they are in this remake of the games, which again makes these trying to complete these games a living hell. If you try to go through these games just without trying to get the platinums for them, you'll have a much better time. Because yes, you'll still suffer. Yes, you'll still die a lot. Yes, you'll still rage, but they're gonna be literally up to thousands of deaths less than you'll have in total throughout the whole trilogy. Then if you just try to complete the games just single playthrough, I'm done. I just wanted to play through the game to say that I played it, in a more casual manner.
Yeah.
In Crash 2, what were levels in Crash 2 that I struggled with? I actually can't remember off the top of my head. Crash 1 is the one that stands out the most.
Yeah.
And for good reason. For the reason, all the stuff that I've just said.
Yeah, was it, what was it? I think he was struggled with a castle level? In one of those games?
And it was the first Crash.
Yeah, in the first one,
It was Stormy Ascent.
Oh my god.
I struggled in the first one too. In the first one, I don't remember the name of that one, but it looks very similar to Stormy Ascent. But whatever it was called, I didn't struggle getting through the level. I think I did it in just a couple of tries, just normally. I struggled somewhat on it when I was trying to get the gem and the time trial, because again, in the first Crash, you die trying to get the gem. If you die once, you gotta take off the level and you gotta put it on again. You gotta start from the beginning without dying until you get to the end. Not miss a single crate. Time trial, same thing. You die, you gotta start from the beginning. But that was that one. Stormy Ascent was, and here's the thing. If you complete, you can get the platinum for the first Crash. But there are other two trophies they're a part of the first Crash, but they're also a part. They're their own thing because they're DLC levels that you can download for free. Stormy Ascent is one of those levels. I got the platinum for the first Crash, and I noticed that I hadn't gotten that I had gotten one of those extra trophies, but I didn't care anymore again because I was just burnt out. I was tired of getting my ass kicked by this game, and I thought, nope, I'm gonna move on to Crash 2. Fuck that last trophy. I don't want it. I don't care. I don't want it. I don't want nothing to do with it. Time goes by. I complete Crash 2. I get the platinum. Soon after that, I start Crash 3, and eventually I get the platinum for that as well. But then once I did it, I'm like, no, it's bothering me. My little minor OCD, my gluttony for punishment, my masochism for myself said, no, dude, you have to go now. You're done with Crash 2. You're done with Crash 3. But there's that one or two trophies that are DLC that you gotta go back and you gotta get. And you know what I did? That's exactly what I did. So I went back and I got my ass kicked by Stormy Ascent literally a couple hundred times. It wasn't more than 200 times. It was somewhere
120 something, no?
Yes. Oh wow, even you remember that? I told you. It was
lucky guess.
no, it was 120 something tries. Just like it was 127 tries for.
Oh yeah, for Teresita to beat Water Crunch.
to beat Water Crunch in the Wrath of Cortex. And if you played the Wrath of Cortex, you know the Wrath of Cortex is a cakewalk compared to this trilogy.
Yeah, that was that's the first. I think that's the first Crash game that I've ever actually played.
Probably, huh?
Yeah, cause I remember that level very, very clearly and how easy it is to beat it.
Yeah. But yes, it took me 120 something deaths in total to get through Stormy Ascent the first time, and to get the gem for it, and to get a time good enough that I could get the gold relic, because I believe I didn't get the platinum. No, I did not get the platinum. I remember now. I did not get the platinum because I said, fuck this. I'm so fed up with this. I just want this nightmare to be over. If I get gold, even if it's by a millisecond that I get the gold relic, I'm done. I get this trophy, I'm done. I'm never gonna try to complete this trilogy again, because why would you want to? Why would you need to? Unless you want to suffer more and you hate yourself to the point that you want to make another PSN ID and put yourself to this hell again. No. No. I am never doing this again. Again, I mentioned a couple of levels. I mentioned a couple of boss fights, more in the first Crash than any of the other two. But there were a couple of times, I have to admit, for all three games, in which I had to look up YouTube clips for them, tutorials, because again, I would just try stuff. Here's how I am with games. I've always been with games. I hate looking up walkthroughs, whether they're written or whether they're video walkthroughs. I fucking hate it. I like to do shit on by myself. I like to finish games and say I completed this fucking game by myself. If I didn't complete it 100%, I got through the story or whatever the main mode is by myself without anybody's help. I like to do it like that. I think that's the way it should be. Especially when I'm a person who's played games that are NES hard, right? I like me a good challenge. If I didn't like me a good challenge, I wouldn't have gotten the platinums for this fucking trilogy.
Yep.
But because I died collectively throughout the whole games, literally over 1,000 times, I had to look up a couple of things. Like for example, for Stormy Ascent, I had to look up, what's the best way to play the level to get closer to the gold relic. And I watched like 2 different videos on that, and in those videos, the people that I watched, they got the platinum. And like I just said, they got the platinum, and like I said, I don't need platinum. I just need gold, because thankfully, Vicarious Visions was kind enough to say you only need gold. You don't need the platinum for every single fucking level. And I got the platinum relic for the majority of the levels in the totality of the trilogy. But I said, when I first was starting and to get the relics and gems in the first Crash, I said, no, I gotta have the platinums. That was my mindset. I gotta have the platinums because I gotta make myself feel good like that. But after getting half of the gems and relics for the levels in the first game, I'm like, nope. I changed my fucking mind. I'll be fine with getting most of the platinum relics in the 3 games, and that's what I stuck with. If I got a gold relic in a level, but I checked the time and I noticed that I shave off a couple of seconds in this level, I can get the relic for this like nothing. Then I would go back and I would do that. But if I knew it was gonna be a pain in the ass, it was gonna take me dying over and over and over and over again to get it, I said nope, gold is good enough for me, and so that's what I did.
Yeah. Not to mention he also been switching between Crash and Coco. Like, if I remember correctly, he used the Crash for the time trials and Coco for the gems?
For the most part. Which brings me, now that you mentioned Coco, I was just about to mention this. A level that was a pain in my ass in Crash 3 was, what the heck was the level called? I think the level was called Hot Coco. and you have to use Coco, as the title indicates. That
I think I remember which level that is.
Yeah, you have to use her little fucking water ski thing, and you have to obviously get the crystal for it. But you obviously, like any other level, you get the gem, and you have to do a time trial as well. And in that one, I didn't count. I didn't count. I just know it took me. It was less than 100 tries for sure, but it took me dozens. I tried dozens and dozens of times to figure out. I got the gem. The gem wasn't hard because if you play these levels with Coco, these water levels or jet ski and stuff, you can slow down and turn and go wherever the heck you want so that you can get the crates, whatever crates you need. So getting the crates wasn't hard. It was a time trial that was a major freaking bitch. And I tried dozens and dozens of times to figure out routes in that level to get the best time possible. And I tried going to the left of that level, I tried going to the right of that level, I tried going to the center and then going to the right, going to the center, going to the left, taking this part and then that part, or that part and then that part, and just trying many combinations, because it's just a big area and there's many routes that you can make up on your own, as long as you give it some thought. No matter what I tried, my time was not good enough to even, I think it was to even get the freaking sapphire relic.
Oh man. I think I remember you mentioning that once or twice, and a few times where I actually did sit down and watch you suffer.
Yeah. And so I had to look up a video of that too. And here's the thing. That level, that time trial for that level is challenging enough that even if you look up a video like I did to help you after you're just fed up and you're tired and you want it to be over with, even if you look up the video, you still got to do it. And it's not easy, because if you play that level, you'll see there are nitro crates throughout the level, and you can try to copy the route that they show you for that level exactly. But because the nitro crates are a thing, if you touch one, it blows up on you and you die, and you have to try again. So even after I got showed a quote unquote best path to do the level in, I still have to try over and over and over to do it myself. So it's not free, even if you look up a video that shows you exactly where you need to go. Because the controls are touchy like that. You're on water. You're on a vehicle. You're not even just running and jumping this time. You're on water in a fucking vehicle that controls differently to how Crash and Coco control when they're on platforms or on surfaces in a 2D or 3D level. So even that is different. Even that is hard.
It sucks.
Again, like I keep saying, I was gonna get into more levels, but just off the top of my head, I can't. There were levels too, in which I had to look up where to find certain gems or where to find certain crates that I couldn't find because I kept on going through levels on my own again, like I was mentioning earlier, where I just kept trying by myself to just find stuff on my own, and then I just said, okay, I've tried enough. I wasted an hour on this level, 2 hours on this level, 3 hours on this level on my own.
Yeah, even there were even a few times where I was here that I actually searched up for him.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, remember the yellow crystal? I searched that one up for you.
The gem?
I mean the yellow gem.
I actually imagine one of the pink crystals like in yellow, and I'm like, that would actually look pretty nice.
That'd be interesting. Colored crystals?
I did not remember that you helped me to do that. But yeah, I mean, no. It's just... okay, we've been at this for almost 70 minutes now. I think it's about time to wrap it up. My throat is getting dry. At about the hour mark, I actually feel like I could go another hour.
Yeah.
But
I would like to mention one more thing. Remember the video of Funhouse, the road of the episode of Road to Nowhere?
Yes, Road to Nowhere. That was like the first one, the first bridge level.
Yeah.
Not that hard. The other, there's like 3 of those.
Yeah, actually, the both my brother and I, we both thought that it was the level was just much easier than they made it look like.
Yeah, and it turns out it is. But if you're shit at platforming, and I am not shit at platforming, that's the thing again. This trilogy is so fucking brutal, so sadistic, so merciless that no matter how good you are or think you are at platformers 2D or 3D, because of the design of the game, you will get fucked over and over and over again. It doesn't matter if you like getting fucked over and over again or not. You will. You will suffer. You will fail over and over again. You will die over and over again. You will get frustrated. You'll feel like you want to quit. You'll feel like you want to punch your TV, like it did to me.
Yikes.
And for a couple of weeks after that rage that I felt, that made me want to punch my TV even, and I'm sure I could break this if I punched it, like I was saying earlier. It took a couple of weeks for that kind of rage in games in general for me. It got that bad. It took a couple of weeks after I finished Crash 2 for my rage to just die down and for me to become cool with games again like that. Because as my family, we would play Fortnite together, and I would rage. I would fucking yell at my family, and it's like I wouldn't just like cuss them out and say, "You stupid motherfucker! Didn't you see that son of a bitch behind you?" and that kind of thing. Like I wouldn't, I wouldn't get aggressive to that point, but I would rage, and half the time I would just keep it to myself and just say nothing because I would think like, "No, dude, like you're fucking raging again. You gotta come down." But that's worn off. That trauma of my life from this trilogy has worn off. Thankfully, I never want to do this again. I will never do this again unless somebody comes up to me and say like, "Hey, I'll pay you $1 million if you do it again." Then I will do it again, but only then. And guess what? Because reality is what it is. That's never gonna happen, and so I'm never gonna fucking do this again unless somebody offers me a big sum of money to see me do it. Then and only then will I do it again. Yeah. But until then, never again. I'm done with this fucking trilogy. I'm done.
Yep. And thankfully, because of that, I don't plan on touching the trilogy anytime soon. Not the remake, at least.
No. And now I want Crash Team Racing. Although not as much as I wanted it. Before fucking Activision pieces of shit put microtransactions in it. But like I said, this episode has been long enough, and I think it's about time that we end it. So that's a story for another day, that game. And maybe I'll make an episode about that too when I get it eventually, because I don't know when I will get it. I just know that someday I will. Although I fucking hate how games nowadays have to be packed with microtransactions and packed with 1,000,000 fucking skins and packed with fucking seasons and passes and all that bullshit. But anyway, I think we will end this here now. It's gone long enough. I hope you enjoyed this rambling and this talk and this discussion about God of War and Mystery Dungeon games and the main event itself, Crash Trilogy. I'm glad that finally I got this off my chest because it had been nagging me for months since the first episode. It has been nagging me, and I'm just glad that it's finally done and recorded. And now obviously I just gotta put all the footage together. I have like 10 freaking gigs, I think a little more, of Crash Trilogy footage saved just for this episode. And I'm not gonna use all of it, but whatever I end up using it, I saved some of like 2, 3, 4 of the videos, footage of the levels that made me struggle the most. So you can look forward to that once this episode is up on the channel soon. But until then, if you enjoyed this, you're welcome to go back and watch some of the other videos in this channel. You can, if you haven't listened to the first 3 episodes of the podcast, you should, because I think they're great, just like this one.
Yeah.
If you want more of unlimited bits, which basically means if you want more of me, if you haven't gotten tired of my voice or of my words, you can have more of my words on Twitter at UnlimitedBitsG. And although I'm not as active as I was in years past, you can also find me on Instagram, promoting the videos of the channels and then posting about a t-shirt or about one of my more recent tweets that I want to share also on Instagram to try to get some discussion going Although that unfortunately doesn't happen often. You can also find me on Instagram at UnlimitedBitsGaming, which you're gonna see here on the screen.
Indeed.
And last but not least, Jazmín, thank you for joining me once again when nobody else will, because although I know people that have also been into video games all of their lives, just like I have, I feel like nobody can talk about games the way that I do. And not just because, for example, I love Crash games more than anybody else that I know. It's not just because it's this specific game, it's just because I feel like nobody has a passion for them that I do. And that's why I have a gaming channel. And that's why I can make podcasts like this and take the time to sit down and record them and save footage of them and put them together and actually put them out there to the world like this.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you for joining me, Jazmín. Do you have any last words?
Well, never play Crash Trilogy.
Don't
never
do
play
it.
The trilogy.
Don't do it unless you want to fucking suffer. Don't do it. Don't fucking do it. You'll hate yourself, you'll hate your life, you'll hate video games, you'll hate everything. So don't do it. You want to play through the trilogy, play through it normally, but do not try to complete it unless you want to suffer.
Also, never throw a very hard fried chicken at your TV, because then you actually break it.
What the hell is that?
That's from a video. Sorry.
Well, that just derails the last bit of rage that I put on just for show to end this. Okay, we're done here. We're done here. Thank you for tuning in if you made it this far. And we'll catch you on episode 5 of the UBPOD. So, see ya.
See you next time.